Hi, everybody. I'm PJ Kwong from the Content Store, and I am thrilled to be back with my friends from Ringette, Ontario. We have so much ground to cover today. There have been so many updates about the return to play. So we're going to get right to it. And the first guest I'm going to introduce is our Executive Director, Pam Julian.
Hi,
Pam.
PJ. Hi.
You're well?
I'm tired, but well, yes. I think
next
everybody's in the same boat.
You're absolutely right. The next person I'd like to introduce is the Technical Director for Ringette, Ontario, and that's Karla Xavier. Karla, welcome.
Hi, how are you doing?
I am well. How about you?
Good, thank you. Good.
That's wonderful. Okay, guys, let's get right into it. You have released some return to Ringette guidelines. That was released on July 8th. Can you guys quickly run me through what those guidelines look like?
Sure. We basically have we've been working on these for a few months. So what we wanted to do was try and create stages that we were able to. It's very hard to predict. I'm going to be very honest with you. It's very hard to predict when we don't know what's going to happen. So we tried to create very high-level stages that could accommodate a very conservative and methodical approach, a very careful approach to returning to activity, and then eventually returning to play. So we, in discussions with Ringette Canada and the other PSOs, created these stages that we felt were the best way back with the information we had at the time. Karla, do you want to jump in on that or add anything to them?
I think that some people have asked kind of why we differ a little bit from the Ringette Canada stages or their progressions. And I think it's just important to note that we do follow along the same progressions as Ringette Canada, but we've just divided our stage 4 and 5 up, where they kept it as one progression. We felt it was important to differentiate between getting on the ice and what we see as kind of a normal situation, a normal 5-on-5 play, and then actually returning to this competition, because returning to competition like tournaments and provincials and regionals, we feel is a whole other step, and one that may take some time between our stage 4 and our stage 5. But we really do align with the Ringette Canada's rollout and supported, and we're a part of that conversation the whole way through. So I think it's important to note that we are on the same path as them and as the other provinces as well.
You know, I want people to really understand here that we are in uncharted territory. And as much as there has been so much planning and so much work to try and get the return to Ringette guidelines out there, there are always changes that seem to be coming up. So how are you guys able to sort of adapt as quickly as you are? I mean, what are the steps that have gone into all of this? Keeping in mind, everybody, that this is uncharted territory. So it's not like you can say, okay, that's the guidelines, away we go, and on to the next project. So tell me a little bit about that, Pam.
Yeah, they're definitely not something that you create and put on the shelf and go, oh, I'm done. You're constantly changing and constantly learning, as we saw last week with the province coming out with moving to stage 3. So it should be noted that no sports were consulted prior to that, nor did we have any information about that before it came out. So we were just as surprised and excited as everyone else, but then realized quite quickly that it was going to be, we were going to have to make some adjustments to our RTR guidelines. So we knew that going in, that it was going to have to be constantly adapted, that they had to be organic and fluid because we had to move with the times. So when we did get the announcement and we were able to jump on a town hall with the ministry, not much was shared about sports at that point. The framework that went out should be noted is not a legal document. So that's more of like a publicity piece that goes out from the ministry or the government that kind of gives an overarching guideline or resource for people to reference, but it is not a legal document. So we had to actually wait until the updates to the Emergency Management and Civil Protections Act was put in place. So we had to wait for that to come out and then read those, interpret those, consult with legal. And this, to give you an idea of the timeline, the announcement went out on Monday. We were able to consult with legal by Thursday. So we definitely couldn't make a decision or changes within 24 hours. We then had to take those legal documents and the suggestions from our advisor and present them to our season coordination committee, our SEC group, which is I'm speaking very fast here, everyone, because I'm trying to get through everything very quickly for you. It's made up of all our regional directors, the chair of games and tournaments, the chair of officiating, a coaching representative, and Karla and myself from the office. So we consulted through that, and at the same time, we're looking at all of these items, and we're looking at the legal aspects of what we're supposed to do and what we're allowed to do. So just to give you an idea, if you were to the act, and anybody who wants a link to this afterwards can email me and I will give it to you. But within section 2, subsection 5, under section 8, it says team sports may only be practiced or played within the facility if they do not allow for physical contact between players, or if they have been modified to avoid physical contact between players. So for us right away, we know we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and look at how we can change the rules, and Karla can talk about that a little bit more in a bit, but that's to give you an idea of just the first thing we've had to look at. Then we had to take our recommendation to the Audit and Risk Committee, which is the standing committee of the Board of Directors, and we had a meeting, all of us together, on Monday night this past. So in a week, we had done all of that, and still we're not able to make any decisions until we'd actually gone through the different risks that would be associated with whatever decision we made. So just to let everybody know, we will be, after we have our annual general meeting on Saturday, so amidst all of this, we're planning for our AGM, and after the AGM, we'll have our very first board meeting of the new board, and at that time, they will be voting on a recommendation coming from us, which will be focused not on a date, so, but we'll be focused on requirements that associations will have to meet in order to move forward with starting their sanctioned activities. So that date that we had originally had for September 1st, we are taking it off the table as a recommendation. Again, this is something the board has to vote on, but when we will have an announcement as soon as they vote on and make their decisions and what that will look like. And then the associations will have to work through the requirements that they're going to have to do in order to start applying for their sanctioned activities.
You know,
really fast and very quickly.
Do you know what? It's so interesting. What maybe people don't realize in our audience is that there are several different stakeholders within sports. There are the provincial sporting organizations, of which Ringette Ontario is one, and you are responsible for a segment of the sporting population. We get lots of questions, not just in Ringette, but in other sports, because I work with other sports as well, about hockey. But hockey, there is the provincial sporting organization. They are subject to the same rules as all of the others. But then there are private facilities. And then you're trying to negotiate all of the different relationships that you have with other PSOs, with facilities within communities, and also with the NSO, which is the Ringette Canada. So when you were trying to figure all of these things out, Ringette Canada has a set of guidelines and recommendations. Not everything from Ringette Ontario lines up. Can you tell me the process by which you created your guidelines and how you worked with Ringette Canada?
Well, I think, Karla, you could probably jump on this one because, you know, you're a big part of it.
I think, as I said before, we are following along the lines of Ringette Canada, except we've added that extra stage. So we're both starting, they've lifted their initial ban, so they're already into stage. We'll say they're in stage 2. We're still in stage 1, but we are following their trend. The training, the modifications to the rules are all, we're all working together to do that. Currently, I'm sitting on a Ringette Canada working group that's looking at the return to modified gameplay. So that's going to be the different formats we're going to use, as well as rules that are hopefully going to allow us to get back on the ice within physical distancing rules. So right now, we are not, people say, well, Ontario is in stage 3. Why isn't Ringette Ontario on stage 3? Well, right now, we're not allowed any contact. So even if you get on the ice, which we're not permitting yet, once you get on the ice, there's still no actual contact. There's no actual gameplay being allowed. So I'm working with Ringette Canada. We're looking at how do we modify our current rules to actually allow some gameplay. And that's going to be making sure that there's no contact on the ice. that's difficult, but that's the only way that we're actually going to get back to playing any sort of games in the future, in the near future. We do not foresee them lifting the contact ban for at least a few months.
Yeah.
And that could be, and that's all sports. All sports have made these modifications. When we see hockey out on the ice, it's physical distancing hockey. They are not playing games. There are a lot of very strict rules. There are people watching them. There are people alerting when people are like impeding on the social distancing guidelines. So people may see hockey on the ice or soccer on the soccer field, but they don't realize all the modifications to the rules that have been put in place to still adhere to all the guidelines that we have to follow.
Let's go a little bit to sort of more brass tacks. So the gathering size may be whatever it's going to be, may change, may not. All the rules are really in a state of flux. But let's talk a little bit about registration and about payment deadlines. Are there any kind of changes that you're able to make to that in light of this COVID situation?
100%. We are looking at this season as kind of, we're not going to be having those registration deadlines. We want to encourage people to be able to register throughout the season. And we'll be doing staggered invoicing for associations. So the normal invoice, the first one would be, December 1st kind of timeline. And then we'd get a secondary or a third one. So we don't want to cut people off from having that opportunity to be able to offer registration throughout the season. So no, those deadlines won't be in place. The only thing I will stress that is imperative is that everyone needs to be registered before they step into any kind of sanctioned activity.
So let's talk a little bit about the registration. So if I'm in a region and I'm not able to register for a team because they're not going to field a team this season, am I able to get a release? I mean, how does that whole process work?
Yeah, we're gonna say register with your home association whether they're going to field a team or not, because at this point we are unclear as to whether there will be parameters around municipalities in terms of where you can where you live, and then if you're able to attend in that community center. So for instance, in BC, there's places where you can't come from outside that municipality to play in that arena. And I also think that if, depending on what stage your community is in, it's not, you need to stay in your community. You can't go amongst the community. So we're gonna table that one for this season for now until hopefully things open up. But at the beginning of the season, that's not something we're going to be encouraging.
And I just go ahead, Karla.
I was just going to say, I think it's really important to for everyone to understand that the goal is that once we do get into, if and when we do get into any sort of team formation and icing teams, the regional directors, the associations are really going to try and make sure everyone has a team. And it's not necessarily with your association, but it might be that association next door. I think the whole idea is getting our numbers set first within your home association and within the region. And then once we're allowed, then we can see where those teams lie. But the big thing that the regional directors and we really wanted to stress at the SEC committee was we are going to find a home for everybody, because the biggest thing is that we want everyone back on that ice.
Yeah.
You know what? You're a mind reader, because you answered the question I was just going to ask, Karla. So thank you for that. Okay, so let's move again to another sort of practical aspect. Waivers. Let's talk waivers. What is the process? What does it mean? The return to Ringette guidelines. There's a waiver within. Is that what all that they need? What do associations need to be considered?
So I guess the first thing we want our associations to start doing is getting that COVID safety leader, our CSLs, in place. And that's what the role is Ringette Canada called a safety officer. So the safety officer, because that conflicts with our Rowan's Law safety officer on the bench, we've decided to call it a COVID safety leader. So we need them to be in place. We will then be working directly with those individuals in each association to help them get set up. So we have all the waivers ready. Our registration system, RAMP, has got the waivers uploaded in the back end for everybody. We have health attestation forms. We have a checklists. We have all that stuff ready to go. I know that, it's going to be a process. And I think the big thing to understand is that all of our associations are going to have a lot of things they're going to have to do, and that we will be there to support them. Their regions will be there to support them, and we will work with them through this. I strongly encourage all parents to like step up and help where you can, because we really are going to really need our volunteers, and we really have to come together as a community and collaborate and work together.
We're just getting a bunch of comments again about hockey. This is a Ringette town hall, so we're going to go way back to sort of bringing it back to Ringette. And again, I was a coach for 30 years, so what I'm fond of saying, and I'm a mother of three grown humans, but what I want to say to people is that in 10 years' time, we will remember 2020 to be sure, but whether or not we got on the ice August, September, November, next January, we won't necessarily remember that. So let's try and keep the comments a little bit more focused on Ringette and to what we do know, because honestly, there is so much we don't know. Here's another thing I don't know. Can you talk to me a little bit about whether or not Come Try Ringette is going to be a possibility? I might even try Ringette. I'm from ice sports,
So we're still where Ringette Canada has still not lifted that ban on hosting those events. Obviously, the numbers and just all the waivers, etc., that would go along with those events are not ready, and we're not ready to host those. So I actually don't foresee us hosting those until the new year at this point.
You know what? That's a fair response. Can we talk a little bit about equipment, face masks, cages? Does any of that change?
Again, not at this point. Ringette Canada would be the one who would be issuing any of those changes. They have been in different meetings. There is no requirements being put down on sports to change our actual equipment. So we are not under the impression that any of that will be necessary moving forward. So that's good news.
Yeah, it is good news. I find that one of the things that is complicating the situation in Ontario is because we are such a big province. Well, all Canadian provinces, except for the ones out east, are pretty big. And as a result, the standards vary from region to region, making it far more complicated to make all of this kind of work out. One of the things that is a bit of a complication is social gatherings. Is there any kind of protocol where that's concerned, or is that something that's just off the table for the moment?
I think that as long as people are following within their municipal and local health guidelines, right now the province is saying it's 50 maximum indoors and 100 maximum outdoors, as long as there's 2 meters distance between people. So I don't foresee us having any issues as long as people are following within that, as long as the social gatherings and everybody's respecting and they're wearing their masks and they're keeping their distance. I think that that's perfectly fine.
We're talking about games starting as of January 1st. And again, the hockey situation is coming back in. Some people say that the things are not going to be back to normal until the summer of 2022. And that's from the World Health Organization. Are you thinking no Ringette games until then? I don't think that that's actually what's going to happen. But what do you girls think?
I don't think so. I think we'll get back in some format, in some way. And I mean, Karla can speak to wanting to get back on the ice more than anyone. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to note that I have played this sport for 34 years. So I want to be on the ice as much as probably any of the kids that are signed up. I do not want to miss the season, and I think I think that we'll be on the ice. We might not be in 5 tournaments this year. We might not quite hit all the teams and do all the traveling we might we've normally done, but I do foresee us getting on the ice soon, having modified games, and then transitioning into what we like to call normal Ringette and moving forward. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that, once the school hits and everyone goes back to school and we see what's going on with the numbers, I think that things will start to ease up. I think that's the big deterrent is school. And can the kids, if the kids can go back to school safely, I think that sport will return a lot faster. And I think that that's what's holding a lot of stuff up, and rightly so. But I think we give it a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, and we'll be back on the ice.
Yeah, I agree.
Getting back on the ice is, of course, what everybody wants. I know that early on there were sports, not just hockey, but other ice sports that took advantage of private facilities and then got nailed for being in facilities before they should have been. So it's very difficult to be looking at everything and knowing that private facilities seem to be operating under different guidelines. So I absolutely feel the pain of all the parents out there. As I said, I was a coach for 30 years and a skater before that. So we all feel the same thing. We all want the same thing, whether it's adults, whether it's children. We want everybody to be able to get back to their sport with passion. I'm just going to go to a great question from Jody as soon as I find it. If there's a season, could it be going further into the spring?
Well, it is something we've talked about. It's not off the table. I think it's going to depend on what sports may be coming in behind and using that facility. And I think it's going to depend on what your facility says. So it's not a no and it's not a yes, because it is far enough in advance that we don't even know what's going to happen next month, that we're not saying no to it. It's definitely, if we can do it, we'd like to.
There is no doubt that what we'd like to do. Another kind of cool question from Jay Waxman, and that's wondering about if everybody is not really understanding how it is that some people are on the ice. Ringette Canada has lifted the ban on Ringette activities. Ontario Stage 3 allows on ice activities. Then why are we not allowed back on the ice during Stage 3 for skills, etc., if other users are allowed? This is where it's complicated in Canada. So many different regions, so many different advice, and you are working with a team of advisors that includes insurance people, that includes lawyers, and you seem to be erring on the side of caution. Can you comment on that?
Sure, and I think it's a question we've gotten a lot. Again, I'll harken back to PJ's comment. There's a lot of private facilities that are running private hockey schools, private hockey camps. We have no control over that, nor does the Ontario Hockey Federation or the alliances. None of the PSOs have control over what goes on in private. So the private are answering directly to the province. They no longer answer to the PSOs because the government removed that aspect from the laws. So we're frustrated just as much as everyone else when we hear those things, because we also know that a lot of our associations use community centers and community ice. And there's a lot of community centers that are not open yet, that may not put ice in yet, or may not even put ice in at all. So this is part of that process that the associations are going to have to do, is they're going to have to work with their facilities to find out the timing of that. So again, it's like the movie theaters. So they opened up, they said movie theaters can go forward, but Cineplex said, no, not yet, we're not ready. So I think we have to be cognizant that just because the province says this is what we're doing as of today, doesn't mean everybody's ready to step into that zone just yet.
Let's talk a little bit about teams and team formations. So how are we going to get that all figured out? So we've got tryouts, as part of creating a team. Is that actually going to be possible at some point in the near future? Is it even worthwhile? What do you guys think about coaches and how many teams a coach can coach? Are there changes in place for this very unusual season?
And Karla, I'll let you take this one.
So, I mean, right now, again, it's all kind of speculation on timing. We would like to think that there's going to be teams formed, but we can't guess what stage that's in. We can't guess when the contact will be kind of reinstated into sport. We don't advise teams to have like full tryouts without the contact, using any sort of modified training. I think that we can stress that the biggest thing is just getting people back on the ice to do, like a lot of people have talked about, getting them back to do skills and drills, getting them back skating, getting them back in shape. And I think that's our focus at this point. We're still in stage 1, likely moving to stage 2 soon. But we're looking maybe tryouts. If there's any sort of team formation that's going to happen, it's not going to be until a later stage. I will say that under the current guidelines and e-laws that we have seen come out, I would advise coaches that they commit to one team only. This is something that it's not much we can discuss on right now, but if you end up having to play in a sort of a bubble, let's say, or a mini league, you'll only be permitted to be in one of these mini leagues. And so you're only permitted to coach in one of these mini leagues. That would be my recommendation, is to focus on one team this season. I understand that a lot of people coach multiple teams, but it's just not something that I would set up for this season moving forward.
I want to talk a little bit about PPE. And the fact that for the moment there's been sort of minimal information about that. Can you comment on what that's going to look like?
So we can't really comment on what is going to happen because we don't know what's going on in your municipalities. So take, for instance, Toronto and Peel. They've now mandated indoor mask wearing, right? So, but not all around the province are they doing that. So we're trying to be cognizant of the layers that go on top of whatever we put out, which are the municipality and the local health guidelines. So, and you might have a facility that says you have to wear a mask on the bench and you have to wear a mask when you walk in, but players can go without. Or you may have a facility that doesn't ask you to do anything, or you may have a facility that asks you to wear gloves and masks as a coach. So we're trying to be saying, be prepared, have your PPE. And also, to me, it's respectful and it's cognizant of everyone else, and wear your mask and keep your distance where you can. And if the facility is asking you to do these things, please do them, because any violation within the facility could risk an ICE contract, could have your team being sanctioned or your association being sanctioned. And we definitely don't want to see any of that happening either.
Can you talk a little bit about online training? You mentioned that there is a COVID safety leader. Did I get the term right?
Yeah.
And there are other sorts of, because this is also new. Mm-hmm. Tell me about online training and if there is anything, or if there is some reading up that people can do.
Yeah, we have a job description we've been working on. We have a list of requirements. And once that CSL is identified in each association, they will be put into a team management program with Ringette Ontario, which means they'll have daily access to us. We're also going to then do a Zoom call with them, and we will go through the requirements and the training of what they'll require. And right now we also have a volunteer who's doing a fabulous job working on a presentation of our guidelines that associations can then use. It's a PowerPoint format with their parents and can go through them. And it's a really great job he's doing. So we're working on resources. We're doing our best to try and create things that we know are consumable and easy to understand.
You know what? I have, we're getting near to the end of our time, and I want to thank everybody for watching this live, because it's fantastic. All of the interaction, all of the great questions that we're getting are just fantastic. So thank you very much to everybody out there in the audience. I would like you guys to please comment on the sorts of specific things that you're doing to help support your associations. What kinds of measures are you taking during this time of COVID to help support your stakeholders?
Oh boy. Well, as I said, we've been creating all these waivers and guidelines and checklists, and we've been working on some new ones that'll go out tonight, or actually tomorrow morning. We've adopted, Ringette Canada's got a really great risk mitigation form that we are going to have associations use, which is really going to help. We've got waivers for events, for attestations, for online training. And we've also are working on, as I said, all the processes that we are here for them. We have been here for them since March 13th, when everything shut down. We have not had a break. We have been in crisis mode since then. And we do our best to answer all their questions and to support them in any way we can. So again, that will continue through all of this. We're not going away. We're not leaving people to try and figure things out themselves. We will be working with the contact person in the associations on a very regular basis.
You know, it's interesting to look at the comments as they go by, and lots of people are sort of hoping for very specific answers. But as we mentioned before, with Ontario being as large as it is, and with all of the different regions that we have, and the different, frankly, COVID risk that there is within the different areas, it's been very difficult to figure out sort of like the line in the middle to sort of do what's what. Can either one of you, perhaps Karla, this is a question for you. Somebody here on the chat has been talking about how difficult this is for coaches. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I would say definitely. I mean, this is hard because you're kind of between teams at this point as well. So some people have been probably put in a position for next year, but they don't have a team, or they're still kind of, monitoring how their team from last year is doing. So I understand that they're kind of in limbo here, and they want to get back on the ice, and they want to get going with whatever group that they're gonna have for the next season. I think it's really important that we continue to reach out to all the athletes you've probably coached in the past. I think that's the best thing to do at this point, is to really be there. We've posted a lot of articles, and Coach.ca has a lot of good articles about just supporting athletes in general, and supporting our participants as they've kind of gone through COVID as well. I think it's also a great time to just, re-emphasize all the online learning tools that are out there. For coaches, it's best to get started now. If you're wanting to coach, if you're already coaching, there's all kinds of great online modules to get going on and to work towards. As well, we will be moving CSI and CEI courses online for this coming fall. They will start early October. So those will be going forward. Again, the more information to come. We don't have all the details, but 100% they will be online. And I think just getting all those tools ready before that course is what we can ask any potential coaches to do at this point. We will be doing development sessions. We will be offering a lot more coaching webinars online this year, trying to get professional development going. And just trying to support coaches and our officials in the same way as we go into kind of an uncharted territories. So we also, just a plug, we also just released our drill library for this week. Really, we want all these coaches, they have all these amazing ideas. We really would love them to send them in. We're going to start posting them. We're going to start putting together some videos and just, little things that can help these coaches get ready for these skills and drills that they're going to be doing on the ice, for these modified gameplay. We really want to support the coaches and our officials moving forward. So
wonderful. We have a question from Katie that I think is worthwhile, and that is, do we know about liability insurance, or do they have to go with their individual insurance providers? I don't know how this works, so I'm interested in the answer too.
So we are all covered underneath liability insurance as Ringette Ontario. The current situation with COVID is we're lobbying with the government right now to protect associations during the COVID thing. I'm getting tired. The COVID crisis and right now, because what happened in BC was the government actually passed a legislation to protect, during the Emergency Act, sport associations and that. So there's been a lot of lobbying going on with the Ontario government right now. Short answer, you're covered, and you will continue to be covered. But when it comes to COVID, we won't know what the new clauses will be in our insurance until September 15th, when we receive our new insurance.
Okay, that's great. So I just want to say something out there to the audience, and that is that if you want to rewatch this live, you will be able to. It will be on Facebook. It's archived. We're also going to have a chance to have Return to Ringette FAQs that will be posted on the website. So for additional information and responses, make sure you go to ringetteontario.com. I'm PJ Kwong, and I want to thank Pam Julian, Executive Director, and Karla Xavier, Technical Director from Ringette Ontario. I want to thank you both for joining me. This has been a lively session. And to the audience, thank you too for all of your enthusiasm, all of your passion for your sport. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye for now.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you.